Welcome to another installment of Connect with Carla B. Let's see, I'm sitting in a home listening to some tranquil, relaxing, meditative music with someone I'd like to call my community mom and a girlfriend because she's hot like that. And she's our local historian. We can call her a Griot. And by now, I'm thinking you already, if you're in my community, then you know there could only be one woman that I'm referencing. And her name is Gwendolyn Reese. Gwendolyn, I'm not even going to say her middle name, although I know it. Gwendolyn D. Reese. Hello, Miss Gwendolyn Reese.
Namaste.
Yes. So thank you, first of all, for this opportunity to sit down with you as the woman who was given my inheritance early. So a lot of stuff that if you see me wearing it and you're like, ooh, that is fierce. Miss Gwen gave those to me and I wear them proudly. But Miss Gwen, okay, I know. If you could introduce yourself to us the way, I'm fighting between two people. So I'm fighting between the fierceness of a Tina Turner and the wordsmithing of a Maya Angelou. So if you can introduce yourself to us as if they were introducing you to us, she's so fierce I had to give her two people, which is hilarious. Two people came to mind. What would you want us to know about you in the form of an introduction?
The two people you gave me is so interesting. It takes a moment to think through it. And I'm going to say from a Maya Angelou standpoint, without any ego involved in what I'm about to say, phenomenal woman comes to mind. And it's not that I think of myself as a phenomenal woman, but it's more that that's what I'm reaching for. That's what I'm aspiring to be. A phenomenal woman, to be the best me that I can be and to live the best life that I can live. But I also would introduce myself in more of African heritage way. And I think this is very important, and I'm using it as a way to introduce myself all the time. For me, it is a grounding in my ancestral inheritance. And I think that's so important. So I'm going to introduce myself to you. I am Gwendolyn Reese.
Introducing yourself.
Rooted in my ancestral heritage because, as you know, the history is so important to me. And not just our history in America, but our history that predates that. But when I introduce myself this way, it's a grounding for me. So I am Gwendolyn Reese, a woman of African descent, born and raised in America, a country that still does not honor me as a full human being or treat me with equity. I am a descendant of formerly enslaved people from Sierra Leone, West Africa, and the Brass Ankles peoples who lived along the eastern seaboard of the United States. I am the daughter of Betty Brothers Reese. I am the granddaughter of Leola Sweat Brothers and Jessie Cole Williams. I am the great-granddaughter of Rosalie Sweat and Lisa Raper Cole. I am who I am because of the courage, the determination, the strength, the resiliency, and the sacrifices made by those who came before me. This is who I am.
Well, this is the first time that someone has been so clear, has provided such clarity for an introduction. And I'll take some latitude to say you're also a mother. not only of your two children, but of many of us who you have provided mothering for, and an open door to share in a motherly, big sisterly kind of way.
And proudly so. And Carla, because that is our role. It should be the role of every person to mentor, to parent, to love, to support, to nurture those who come after us.
Right.
Whether it's in a motherly fashion, because maybe the age difference,
Right.
or sisterly fashion,
Yes.
once again, because of the age difference in the relationship. But we are a family, not just the family we were born into, but a family of people. And I'm going to speak specifically to people of African descent. We are a family of people who have a shared historical experience, whether we know it or not, whether we claim it or not, even if we deny it. Our denial does not erase it or eradicate it. It is our shared history. And so throughout our history, from the continent of Africa to the early days of even enslavement, we nurtured each other. If a mother was sold away from a child during slavery, another woman would parent that child. We've always done that, and we have succeeded to date because of the unity and the love that existed among us. We're losing a lot of that now. And for me, it's so important. So I know I won't be here always. Don't even want to be.
Okay.
But there is so much that I can give to those who are coming after me. But even more importantly, so much they give to me. So it's very much a reciprocal relationship. So you may call me your community mother, but I call you my community daughter. You have advised me just as much and as often as I have advised you. I have come to you for your ideas and input and feedback and perspective just as often as you have come to me, because it's about a mutual respect and valuing of what we have to give to each other. And there's so much to be given. There's so much to be. I love your daughter.
Yes.
Jade is just such
Unique.
an interesting young woman, and she has so much to give and teach, even to her elder, which is what I am. And so I know that. So I enjoy watching her and talking to her and getting the perspective of someone her age. And she gives me so much hope for that younger generation. Because so many of those kids are lost. They're not sure. They're just kind of floundering but not Jade.
Right.
Jade gives me so much hope for the future because of the young woman that she is.
What came up for me a little bit is also the fact that for me, within our community, you may or may not realize this, but you're a larger than life force. But when we sit down and we're talking about either things I dealt with as a child, coming into womanhood, etc., like, we're able to share similar stories. And that's interesting to me, that we have or as they say, more in common than not. And it's not just our race commonality, but we have, I think that's part of why we connect so well in the way that we connect.
There's so many things that happen, but that's an intergenerational experience. So I had it 40 years later, you had something similar. So we can talk about that. That's intergenerational, and our experiences are very similar as a people.
Yes.
So we talk about intergenerational trauma because we all suffer from that. But that trauma and our shared experience, even though your people were not here enslaved on this continent, in this country, we're still of African descent.
Yes.
And so there's just something in our DNA. We can't help it that connects us. So why should we want to not honor that? because it creates this commonality, it creates this bond, it creates this feeling of togetherness, it creates a sense of family.
Mm.
And so I think those of us who are in tuned to that, and
Right.
with that, and not everyone is, those of us who are sensitive to that, those of us who really cherish and honor our history, we find that that is such a rewarding and comforting
Mm.
feeling to have in this shared African experience. I don't care what country you go to,
Hmm.
a person of African descent, there's so much we have in common. Whether
Right.
you were born in France
Hmm.
or the United, wherever, and that's that deep, deep piece of who we are.
Mm.
That's the ground, the land, the culture, the blood. It's a part of us. It is in our DNA, and it's
Mm.
transferred from generation to generation. And I love that.
Have you done
And
your
I honor
ancestry?
that. I actually have not done my ancestry. I know because of my aunt who was a professor at
Okay.
A&T University, and one of her colleagues. They did a lot of work digging into the history, and because my family came in the port in Charlotte,
Okay.
Charleston, South Carolina, they were able to trace back. So many of the ships that came into that port were
Okay.
from West Africa, and many, many, many of the people were from Sierra Leone. So
Okay.
my aunt was able to trace us back to Sierra Leone.
Wow.
I'm going to do
Oh man.
the ancestors. I want to know more than that. I want to
Yeah.
know the tribe. I want
Yes.
to know. I want to go
So
as
you're doing
deep
African
as I
ancestry.
can. So I'm going to do African ancestry. I'm going to Ghana in January,
Okay.
and it will be my first trip to Ghana, one of the countries I haven't been to yet.
I'm coming.
But I
Passport
want to
ready.
know I want to know that part of my
Yes.
ancestry, even though I'm not going to Sierra Leone.
Right.
I want to know that before I go.
Mm.
And then I think my next trip, Sierra Leone has been through some turbulence, but
Okay.
I think my next trip, I really, once I know the tribe, once I can dig deep
Mhm.
into it, that would be the
Wow.
next country I would visit is Sierra Leone.
I'm planning to do. I keep saying I'm doing mine. Not even for me. Jade has asked me for years. She wants to know more about my familial history, and she knows what my mother has told her, but she really wants to know. So I said, this year maybe for her as a birthday gift, I will do it. And I've intentionally not done it because in my mind, I'm from Ethiopia. I'm an empress from Ethiopia. And every time I eat Ethiopian food, and now that I'm a vegetarian, I'm like, I gotta be Ethiopian. So I don't do it for it to be disproved, but I plan to do it this year, and I'm
That would be
planning.
sort of unusual if you're Ethiopian.
It would.
It would. Uh-huh.
But it's. I plan to do it this year as a gift to Jade.
Jay.
So,
But let me say
go
this
ahead.
before we move on from there. Ethiopia is one of the countries I visited and stayed for quite a while.
Mhm.
And I have an adopted daughter from Ethiopia, Mesilu. While I was there, they did a naming ceremony.
Oh.
So my Ethiopian name is Taitu. Taytu, Taitu.
Which means?
Taitu was a queen, was one of their strong warrior queens. And the naming ceremony was like hours long.
Oh wow.
And I didn't know what they were saying. So I'm sitting there, I'm going back, and I can tell they're arguing, but I don't know what's
Trying to
going
figure
on.
out the name.
So they're suggesting names, and then they're debating, and then they're like, no. And then someone suggests another name, and they're debating it.
Mhm.
And then the name Taitu came up, and there was no debate. They all agreed. And so that was my name, and she was a warrior queen. Yeah.
And that makes sense. So the wisdom of the elders, the wisdom of the ancestors. So I got to ask you, because I ask all my guests this question, do you remember how either your first memory of connecting with me or how we first connected?
No.
Fact.
It just seems like you've always been there. I can't remember, Carla. I'm sure
No,
you do. So you tell
I
me.
don't.
You
I
don't.
don't. I
Okay.
don't. And it's
So
funny. Somebody else recently said that same
yeah,
exact answer. It's like you've always
always.
been
Yeah.
here. And it's funny because I moved here in '96,
Mhm.
but I definitely became more actively involved probably around 2012 and then 2014 when I
With
opened
the
the gallery.
gallery, yes.
Hmm.
And I lived at the gallery. I loved the gallery.
Yes,
I would spend a lot of money there, but that's not where I went. I
yes.
went to just sit there, um, and just feel the energy there. And I met so many interesting people coming in and out of there. It was just such a gathering place,
Mm-hmm.
is what it was.
Yes.
And even after you move from that location to Maximo, I still had that feeling.
Yeah.
And I would come there all the time. And this piece that people
Yes.
can't see,
I'll take a picture of it and put it
this
in.
piece is so important to me, and it was such a story
Yes.
around that piece. But that's kind of like what you've been in my life.
Mm.
It's like stories, just a
Mm.
collection of these incredible, unusual stories. That's
Mm.
what our experience has
Mm.
been like. It'll be um I'll be somewhere and you'll pop up and or you'll pop up at my door with something, Miss Gwen. I saw this and this is you.
Mm.
Or I was sick in my bed and I kept hearing this voice, go to the gallery, go to the gallery.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I don't feel like going to the gallery. I want to go to the
Right.
gallery. And it wouldn't stop. And I got up and I went to the gallery, and of course, you were gallivanting around somewhere in the mall. You weren't in the gallery, right? And
Right.
so then you had the two stores side by side,
Mm.
and I walked in this door,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just directed to turn, and there she was.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at her. I could not move. I was frozen to the spot. She had called me from my home.
Mm.
She had called me. She hadn't been there very long.
Nope.
And she called me because I was supposed to own her and I had to get there before
Yeah.
someone else did.
Yeah.
And I remember saying, oh my God, I don't think I can afford you, but I have to get you and take you home.
That's right.
And you came, and I said, "Oh, Carla, I'm rooted to the ground. I have to take her home. I know I can't afford her." What? And you said to me, she
Mm-hmm.
was gifted to you,
Yeah.
and you said, "Miss Gwen, whatever you want to
Mm-hmm.
give me for her
Yeah.
will be fine." And then you told me the story of the white woman
Yep.
wanting to give her and get rid of her.
Right. Yeah, because
Every time this woman dusted her, what did she hear? Say it.
I forgot. We said, "Get your hands off of me."
She called her name.
What?
She called her white bitch. Get your
Yeah.
hands off of me. And this woman, her mother owned her, but this woman said, I can't keep her. I'm
Right.
not supposed to have her. And so she gave her to you, and then she called
Yeah.
me to her.
Yeah, because
And
I
she
think
has
I
been in
had
my
barely
home.
got her in there, and here you come along,
Yeah.
and she was right
Yes.
for you,
And she was right, and she is so fierce.
and she's prominently
And she's-
displayed at the door. So you come in, you got to cross
Yes.
her, and I
Yes.
wouldn't
Yes.
cross if she
And
don't want to be
She
crossed.
inspires me. This
Okay.
is, I have two sources of energetic inspiration.
Mm.
She inspires me from my African heritage, and my other inspiration is my animal spirit, which is the dragon.
Mm.
And so you'll see dragons all around
Yes.
my house. And so that's the energy. And for your listeners, this is incredible to me. I was in Tombolo, and I don't read fiction.
Right.
And I turned around and I saw this book, and it said When Women Were Dragons.
Mm.
And so I said, I'm supposed to read this book.
Mm.
And I took it home and read it from cover to cover, and it was just amazing. I already had dragons.
Right.
But then I found her. As soon as I finished reading the book, I walked in Sammy's store, and there she was.
Mm.
But When Women Were Dragons, it's actually about women breaking free of patriarchy.
Mm.
It's a very incredible story. And so that energy for me, because I have never allowed the patriarchal system to dictate my life.
Right.
And so that just really, really resonated with me. And I was always attracted to dragons, but that's when I knew that's my dragon energy.
Mm.
that has always guided me and protected me through my life as it related to patriarchy and
Mm.
sexism and my boldness and my
Yes.
um not fearing living alone,
Right.
knowing that I had everything I needed to
Mm.
be able to not just survive but thrive in life, that
Mm.
I didn't need what they said, your better half. No, I'm my better whole. I
Mm.
don't, there is no better half for
Right.
me. And none of this is egotistical.
Right.
This is who I am.
Mm.
And so I realized that the dragon spirit in me had been strong for many, many years before I even knew it. And that book kind of helped me to understand why.
Mm.
Because it's a breaking away from the patriarchal
What's it
system.
called?
When women were
When
dragons.
Women Were Dragons.
Yeah.
Um, so I can't sit with you. Well, first of all, let's be clear. You're sitting. I'm laying. I'm laying on a recliner, and because I was given the option, so I took it. And but I want to talk about the African American. Before I talk about the African American Heritage Association and Trail, I want to ask you, when did you know that you would be a historian? Because I'll tell you what, oftentimes when people have someone in their community, they have no idea how big, large that person is, and how people are seeking that person from other states to come talk to their people about history, and in this case about Black history. When did you know that you wanted to be a historian, or how did it happen?
I didn't know it.
You did or did not?
I didn't. I did
Okay.
not. I've loved history from a
Mm.
child. It
Okay.
was my favorite subject. Um, the limited amount of Black history I was taught, even though I grew up in segregated schools, so I learned more there than kids are learning now.
Facts.
It wasn't enough, and I knew that.
Mm.
I first became aware of racism, although I did not know it was racism. I didn't know what it was.
Right.
I just knew it was wrong. I was 5 years old.
Wow.
And from that point on, my mother said I refused to drink out of the colored water fountain. I wouldn't use the colored restroom. I wouldn't sit in the back of the bus. And so at that very tender age, something was born in me
Mm.
that was both knowing when things weren't just and fair, and refusing to allow those things to dictate to me how I would live as much as possible. And along the way, the history just became, as I grew older, and I'm an avid reader. I started reading at 4. The school that I attended was an all-Black Christian school, and I wasn't anything special. When I started interviewing people from the gas plant neighborhood who went to that same school, we were all reading at 4 and 5.
Amazing.
Because that's what they taught us. I wasn't special. We all, Gene Davies and Bessie Johnson and John Bynum, and I can't even remember. We were all reading at 4 and 5. Where in public school, you couldn't even start teaching kids to read. So from the time I started reading, I think I was in about 3rd grade when I started really acquiring them. By then I had gone to public school, 16th Street Elementary. I had started becoming very aware of history. And beginning to read. Bertie Robinson was my 3rd grade teacher. I couldn't have had a better teacher. She was just incredible. And I started loving history. And so I just never stopped reading history. And it just grew from there. And I would be telling my parents things about African American history that they didn't know because of my reading.
Right.
And as I grew older, I started, most of my books in my library are books that, most people never heard of. Neely Fuller, and just really just delving into the Nile Valley civilization, just really delving into my history, our history from Africa on. So it was a passion. It was something that I almost didn't have any control over. It was like a hunger, and I just kept, and with that I kept acquiring knowledge. And then Rosalie Peck was my dear, dear friend and mentor, and she co-authored the 2 books about Black St. Petersburg.
Yes.
And we would talk forever. just talking and talking. And Ruby Weissinger was my civics teacher, but it went so far beyond civics, what she instilled and inspired in me. So I was just blessed throughout my life. And then as I got a little older, Peggy Peterman came into my life. And she wrote the Black History pageants each year. And she was full of history. And I would go and sit in her home and we would talk. And I helped her with very little did I do, but with the Black History pageant. And then Perkins Shelton was my friend and mentor. And I just had this constant, ceaseless flow of people into my life that inspired me, that taught me, that molded me, that what I'm doing, I can't do anything but that.
Wow.
I don't have a choice. I don't have a choice. And even more so now with what's happening politically. D.L. Hughley said in an interview, and I repeat his words, giving him credit. He said, "It once was unlawful to teach enslaved people to read. Now it is unlawful to read about enslaved people." And I quote that all the time. But just because they say we can't, just see the shirt I have
I'm looking at it.
I read banned books.
Yes.
Just because someone says we can't does not mean we can't.
Right.
As African people, they've always told us what we couldn't do, but we've done it.
Yes. And done it well.
I love history, and I do believe that history repeats itself.
Yes.
And people are saying right now, "Oh, this is the worst America has ever been." No, it hasn't.
No.
This is a cycle. This what's going on now is just different faces and different names. But this has occurred before. We went through McCarthyism. I mean, there's so much in our history. If you know your history, so that's why it's so important to me, and especially for Black people, because in this country we are denigrated. We are made to feel, even today, that we're less than, we're not valued. We're running up against this, especially our children. If you know your history, then you know that's not who I am.
Right.
This is who I am.
Yes.
I'm from a people.
Yes.
Resilient, strong. I'm from a people where the first university was in Timbuktu in Africa. There has never been a richer man than Mansa Musa.
Yes.
Forget Elon Musk and all these people.
Do you know today?
So we need to know this.
Because you taught that to young people that I work with, today, if any of them is in a room and I ask that question, they can spew it like it was always theirs. So that knowledge of self is so valuable, and so many other cultures have carried on their history with an insistence on that young person having to have that on a weekly basis, with a degree of regularity. And we have either watered it or weakened it to make it palatable for someone. And it's like the stew I gave my dad the other day. I said, "Dad, do you like it?" He said, "It's good, but this sauce is weak." And I said, "Weak?" He said, "Yes, it's." And he said, "Yeah, it's kind of runny." And I said, "Oh, I know that. I'm sorry, I rushed." So the next time I took the same exact stew, I added cassava to it and I let it cook down. And sure enough, he ate the same exact meal with no complaints. So we just simply cannot afford to water, because if you water it down for me, then I'm giving a watered down version of a water to my child, and so on and so forth. So we have to embrace and celebrate, especially for people like us who it's inherent in who we are to know who we are. So in a book or in our nature, we know. So be that, and don't allow anyone to tell you, because I've heard many times what I can't do and what I'm not supposed, or what will not happen. And if you know better, you do better. You do better.
And we have to be unapologetic.
Yes.
So when I when I make certain statements, because I do a lot of work around the area of racism,
Mm-hmm.
specifically anti-Black racism, and a lot of what I'm telling people, they don't want to hear it,
Yes, it
or
makes them
even
uncomfortable.
Black folks,
Yep.
and they want to resist it and deny it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very clear. I'm unapologetically standing here telling you what I know. You do
Right.
not have to take my word. This is factual. You can check. You can
Right.
fact check me all the way
Right.
I want you to. Because if you don't, you will just try to say, she just
Yeah.
said that, and you will try to dismiss it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you research it and find that what I said is factual and true, then you just can't dismiss it as easily. But I
Right.
think for us, many times, we have been somewhat, as a people, we've been somewhat apologetic about our presence, apologetic about, I haven't always been this way.
Right.
But in my beautiful later years, I was told by someone, when you turn 50, there's a level of freedom you never had. When you turn 60, you just don't give up. And so at about 50, definitely 60, I'm 74 years young now. I am totally unapologetic about who I am, what I say, what I think, how I dress, how I speak.
Right.
I'm unapologetic in my own presence, in my own skin,
Right.
and who I am as Gwendolyn Reese, a woman of African descent, born and raised in America.
Well, I know that I talk a lot about how I'm not just St. Pete centric, I'm very South St. Pete centric. And so I know it's a fortune for me to have someone like you in my community, because most people talk about historians as those people, you know, they have to go way back. And so my presence is full because of you in my community. And so, and then when I have those types of conversations or talks with people, I am able to point to the racism study. I am able to point to the African American Heritage Trail. And so, how many years did you spend on the research, and I know with John Wilson and others, to bring this to fruition, where we actually have one of the leading, best documented trails in the country of African history, African American histories and stories that we know are amplified all over the country, but here it is documented, and you can walk up and read a sign. So how long did it take you all to put that together?
And we were all volunteers. And you have volunteers
always
sometimes show up, sometimes not, but we were very committed on this. And I'm going to say we did about, I'm not good with dates.
Okay. Somewhere
between around 4 years, could have been 5, could have been 3, somewhere right in there, of intensive research.
Oh, wow.
And our research was not what you would think of typically as research. Our research was reaching out to people in the community for memorabilia, for pictures, for memories, for stories that they had, that they knew. So if you've been on the trail, you see how we have Melvin Smith up there for the Royal Theater. So we met with his family, and because he was such a key figure. So in doing our trail, it wasn't just about places. It was very important that it would be about the people who were significant to that place.
Wow.
So we featured Melvin Smith, because I mean, anybody back in the day who knew him, I think he was the ticket taker, the bouncer, sold us the popcorn. He did everything.
Like Melvin Smith?
His father.
Okay, got you.
His father.
Okay.
Yes. And so, it was so important to us that we include the community in how we told the stories of our community. Like Sidney Hart, his granddaughter was on our committee, so we had so many people involved who were descendants of some of the people that we talked about, because the trail was just the first 100 years from 1868 to 1968. And so our research was
Is it
more
fair
the.
to say Carla Bristol was born in 1968?
Were you?
All good
That's
things.
wonderful. That's an incredible year.
Yeah, it
For
is.
more reasons than
Yeah.
one. That was the year that Martin Luther King was killed on
Mhm.
my 19th birthday, April 4th, 1968. It was sort of considered towards the end of the civil rights movement, although we're still struggling for that. But that was considered the end of that formal period. That was a very significant year. But for us, we wanted it to be a community um, trail. And the way you do that is by involving people
Right.
in the gathering of the information. Everything on there almost. We purchased a few pictures from the historical museum or something. Many of those pictures were from photo albums from
Oh, wow.
families. So it was a journey of love. And we did not know that we were going. When we started that journey, we didn't know we were going to have a heritage trail.
No, what was
No.
behind it?
It was going to be a brochure or a pamphlet.
Okay. Oh, wow.
And Mayor Bill Foster came up to me and talked about the incredible stories he heard when he attended wakes of African Americans in the community. And he said these stories were so incredible, but they're never heard again. Can't we do something? And I said, yeah, I don't know what, but we can do something. And I started writing down names of people to reach out to say, would you be interested in helping us collect stories in the history of the Black community? And so there was Tina Middleton, there was Ray Arsenault, Evelyn Phillips. There were just a number of people that came together. Betty Harden. To work on this. And they said, yes, we didn't know what we were going to do. So we started collecting information, thinking we would have somewhat of a pamphlet. And the information was so rich. And it just kept coming. It was more than we ever thought. And we were like, we don't know what we're going to do with this, but it has to be more than a brochure. And two of the city staffers, Amy Angel and Kim Hinder, found the grant on the state level, a preservation grant. And that's when we said, oh, we're gonna create a trail, a heritage trail. And so with that $50,000, we kept doing all the work, and out of it came a trail that we are very, very proud of.
Yeah, and you should be, because I mean I'm fortunate enough to have been on the tours. And now we're in our ninth year.
And we're digitized
Ninth
now.
year, digitized. Look it up on YouTube, y'all.
Yeah.
I'll definitely put the link in, and I'll share the link. But it's important because I remember hosting the first anniversary of the trail at the gallery.
Yes.
And that's when I realized how many people came from Naples, and they said, oh, this reminds me of what happened in Naples. Mm-hmm. People came from Tampa. They said, oh, this reminds me of what happened in Tampa. But unless you see it, unless you're able to experience it, you're likely to believe it's either folktale. And the parts of it that you know that I enjoy most is I definitely enjoy how people live together, how the doctor lived next to the housekeeper, lived next to the sanitation worker, lived next to the lawyer,
to the teacher,
right. So therefore, for kids, this idea that I could be a doctor was nothing, because my neighbor was a doctor or a lawyer or this. So I mean, I really, in the scheme of things, of everything cycling and coming, I really look forward to a time where that is the case again. It's why I'm so intentional with teens that I work with to ensure that there's modeling. We had the mayor come out just so they can ask their questions personally, and just so they could see who the mayor is. Because I think we make assumptions that the people live in a community. People are head down dealing with life. They have no idea the influence, the importance of roles in making decisions. everything from the pothole to the stoplight, so it's so important. But the African American Heritage Trail celebrating 9 years. It's actually walkable, and you're coming into the best season of walkability.
We're not there yet.
We're not there. That's why I say coming in.
Yeah.
I know it's not going to be till October this year. That's for sure.
We canceled. We had trolley tours. We started them back up on the first Saturday of the month, but there's been heat advisories every Saturday. So now we've just said we will start them up in October.
Yeah, that would be wise.
Yes, and then we now have someone who guides bicycle tours. Hillary Van Dyke will do bicycle tours for us.
Wow, yes. Shout out real quick to Hillary Van Dyke, outdoor Afro, and our budding historian and a force in her own right. So we love her.
And Hillary and 4 other people have just completed the first training for tour guides for the Heritage Association. So we now have 5 tour guides. They completed the training. They've been certified. I have badges for them. They haven't received them yet.
Is this it? No, this.
I have badges for them. And
let me see. Oh, wow.
And it just says, what does it say?
Wait, I'm looking. Oh, it says African American Heritage Association Tour Guide. Yes.
And they've been certified. They went through a training with me. We're going to do another training because it's a bit much for just me and John to do the tours. And the important thing about it is that someone has to be able to do it when we're not here.
Right.
And so to train some tour guides was just a dream come true for me. And we're excited. Initially, they will be doing it jointly with me.
Nice.
As I observed them for a while, and then eventually they will just be out there on their own.
How beautiful.
We're going to start them back up in October, and then we have the digitized trail where you can sit at your computer and take the full tour with John and I narrating plus interviews from other people who are part of the community. So I think that digitized tour, because of the additional interviews, it enriches the experience for people, even though they're not out in front of the marker. They're in front of the marker on their computer, plus there are additional pictures and photos that they can see that we were not able. One of the hardest things for us when we were creating the markers was every time we send it off, they send it back, you need to edit. You have to cut a little bit more copy. You have to cut, and it was so hard to know what to cut. But with the digitized tour, there's no cutting. Everything we had to cut plus more is added in.
Included. Wow.
It's wonderful.
So the official tour for the African American Heritage Trail is done through the African American Heritage Association.
Yes. And only the guys that are certified by us, because they've been through the training, they know the story. I think it's so important that our stories matter, but to me, it matters more who's telling our stories. So we have, I did a Tombolo African American Heritage Community Conversation last month, and the topic was cultural gentrification. Decided to use that word instead of the word that is usually used about people, taking
misappropriation.
Because gentrification is a word everybody's talking about now. Right. But it's not just about neighborhoods and buildings. It is about our culture and our history.
Yes.
And so when I was doing some of the research, it was amazing to me that one example of cultural gentrification was, and this will offend some people, was white people wearing dreadlocks. And so this was an example given in research, not by me. And it was because when you take a part of a person's culture without understanding how that impacts them. So for many Black people, their job said you can't wear locks.
Yes.
We couldn't even wear braids. We were limited in what we could do. That's not business like. Banks wouldn't let you do it. Corporations wouldn't let you do it. So according to this research, white people wearing locks is taking a part of a culture that is not theirs, but without the repercussions and that Black folk had to go through. So when I think, I was on a tour once, and done by a major historical organization in the city, but they're not steeped in Black history.
Right.
And we're going down 22nd Street, Carla, and the person pointed over there and said, and there was the Snow Peak Drive-In Theater.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had not been on that trolley to hear that,
Wow.
that huge mistake,
Wow.
all of the people on that trolley
Would
would
have
have gone away thinking that at one time there was a drive-in theater called Snow Peak. You should not even want to tell the story of a people that you don't really know other than by reading or listening to someone, but it's not your experience.
Right.
I would not tell the story of the brass ankles peoples from which I'm a descendant because I didn't live it.
Right.
So I would not tell it, even though part of that blood is in me. I would not tell that story because I didn't live it. And even brass ankles is sort of a derogatory term that was given to the group of First Nations people who inhabited that part of the country. It's and it took me a while to know that, because in studying my family history, they referred to brass ankles peoples as part of who we descended from. It took me some years actually to realize that term was something that was not truly embraced by that part of me. So you can't tell a story. Every story is not yours to tell. And I think there is a sense of entitlement that makes some people think they can tell anybody's story, not realizing that their background, their experience, the racism that is embedded and ingrained in this country, the entitlement that is and privilege that is a part of every white person's experience. You don't have to be rich. It's the privilege of having white skin. Not realizing that experience, that reality of yours will color in some way the story that you tell about a people, and you don't really know, and you did not live that experience. So I'm always concerned about, what are they saying?
Right.
How are they telling our story?
Right.
What do they? Why do they even think they should be telling our story? If you are doing something that has to do with African American history, and I said this to Preserve the Bird, I would not lead a tour of downtown or Old Southeast. If somebody calls me, I'm gonna say, here, go to Preserve the Bird.
Yeah.
When someone asks you for a tour of the African American community, why would you not call us?
Right.
And say, there are some people interested. We led a tour of people from Australia a few years back. So as you said, people come from all over. And when they find out we have a trail, 2 summers ago, a group of kids from Maine, I believe, were on a Black History excursion, and they were on a yacht. They were on this huge yacht, and they sailed down the Atlantic. They went to St. Augustine and Fort Mose. They went to Charleston, and they had heard about our trail. And they came around the east coast of Florida, past the Keys, and up the Gulf because they specifically wanted to tour our trail. It was amazing. And when they left us, they went on up the Gulf to the Mississippi River. They also went to a part of Alabama where the Clotilde, the last supposedly slave ship, came. And then they ended, I believe, in Montgomery and Birmingham. But I was amazed that they had heard about the trail. Yes. And they specifically detoured to come to St. Petersburg.
And the thing is that I think everybody should have a level of ownership and responsibility, because if you're doing it and it's not yours to do, that's one level. But if you just want to check the box, oh, I did it, but you were robbed. Yeah. You were robbed, because if Carla Bristol visited St. Petersburg from somewhere else, and I wanted to know about the history of St. Petersburg, I would want it told to me by, for sure, the people who collected the data to present the data. Otherwise, I'm getting what we talked about before about my daddy getting the stew,
The
and
runny.
it's runny, it's watered down. He said the flavors are there, but it's not rich. It's missing something. And I mean, when you tell the story of being able to, getting your first kiss,
At the
right?
Royal Theater.
Like Carla Bristol didn't get her first kiss, but I could say because I heard it directly
Yes.
from you,
Yeah.
or Miss Gwen told me a
Mhm.
story about something Rosalie Peck said, and other people just don't have that. So yeah, I would just caution people, if you want to get the story of African Americans in St. Petersburg told by and researched by people who researched it together with those who lived it, right? Then you will be reaching out to the African American Heritage Association and supporting that organization. That's what I said. People, I want to do it. Well, guess what? Find ways to support those who are already doing it. Because then what happens is funding that should go to this organization goes elsewhere. And that's what we have to be mindful of. What do you do for fun?
This is fun. This is fun because I love it, but I do so much. My travel, and I didn't
Okay.
travel much during COVID. So I've started traveling again. In
Okay,
April,
nice.
I did some local traveling. I'll go to New Mexico for 2 weeks in October. I'll go to Ghana in
Yes.
January. I have an 11-day cruise to Alaska next June.
Mm,
So travel, gardening.
yes.
Gardening brings me joy. Reading. You see all the books. I'm usually reading 4 or 5 books at a time,
Wow.
with one in each room. So wherever I sit down, I can pick
That's
a
so
book up,
beautiful.
and there's one in my car as well in case I have some downtime in the
Mhm.
car. So reading is very cooking. Cooking
Mm,
is I enjoy cooking. My life has been sort of insulated and isolated by design over the past 5 years, but I'm about to embark on a new phase of my life where I'll
yes.
be opening up my space, my home, myself. And
Mm.
so I'm looking forward to cooking and having friends over
What's your
for
favorite meal
dinner.
to cook?
I don't know what's okay. So I won't say meal. So I love caldo gallego, collard green soup. So I
Mm.
love to make that for people.
Mm.
It's
I've
actually
never
Cuban.
heard of or have had collard green
Caldo
soup.
gallego. It's
Caldo
Spanish and
gallego.
it's collard green soup.
Mm.
And I dice up white potatoes, and you can put chickpeas in it, but it's delicious. I
Mm.
mean, it's absolute. The Nat Adderley, a well-known jazz musician, was a very good friend of mine, and when his foot was amputated, he lived in Lakeland. He loved my caldo gallego, so I cooked a big pot, drove to Lakeland,
Mm.
and we sat down, and I still have some of the albums he gave me because Cannonball was better known than that was.
Mm.
And we sat there and we ate caldo gallego with cornbread, and we listened to jazz. So my grandson
Oh my gosh.
caused me to make this bread pudding, which I don't eat. I
Yeah.
don't eat bread
I
pudding.
don't like bread
But
pudding.
he wanted a bread pudding, and I went for the raisins. They were all gone. He'd eaten them.
Mm.
And so I said, well, I've got some dried apricots. He had eaten those. He was
Mm.
visiting. And so I ended up with, well, I don't eat mangoes, but here are 2 mangoes. So I'm
Mhm.
going to cut up mangoes. I'm going to put some coconut in. I'm going to make a coconut mango bread
Mm.
pudding. Well, that became such a hit that's something he wants for his birthday
Oh wow.
every year. I make another bread pudding that is made with a rum sauce with dark rum, and you can get drunk off the sauce.
Mm.
So because my father is a teetotaler, we would never put the sauce on his bread pudding. And because my brothers drink, they would say, forget the bread pudding, just give me the sauce. I love to cook vegetables, and there are a couple of dishes. I learned how to cook collard greens in Zimbabwe.
Mm.
And when I came back and cooked that for my then husband, it just became a staple. So
Oh
it's
wow.
cooked without water.
Mm.
No, you know
Yep.
how we boil meat and then boil the greens forever. It's cooked without water. You just, wash them and you drop them in oil wet and it steams them. They cook in like
Yep.
15, 20
Yep.
minutes. And they would cut up fresh tomatoes in it and diced white potatoes in it. It was
Mm.
delicious. I still do that. So from a lot of my travel in Africa, I picked up certain dishes that I like to
Right.
cook. I have in Ethiopia, there's the coffee ceremony. So I buy the green coffee
Mm.
beans and you roast them yourself. And I have
Wow.
the special pot. And so I'll do a coffee ceremony
Mm.
sometimes when I entertain. So I enjoy cooking. I have so many cookbooks. It doesn't even make sense
Mm.
because I don't want to just cook what I know how to cook. I want to learn how to cook other
And
things
I
too.
see you like tranquil sounds.
Yes.
And
Yes.
what were you playing in your car when
I
I was in your
don't
car a
even
moment
know,
ago?
but it was probably a combination of music that was Billie Holiday and Ella
Yeah,
Fitzgerald
that
and
was
a
nice.
little bit of Lena Horne, and I
Mm-hmm.
can't remember, but it was coming from my phone.
Okay.
So my phone was coming through my Bluetooth, so
Okay.
it was music that I had downloaded.
It felt good. It
Yeah.
felt tranquil.
I don't listen to modern day music.
Mm.
I can't even really tell you an artist today
Wow.
that I truly like. There are a few I know. But there's a certain type of music that I want in my life. I don't want all the sexy stuff. I don't want all the cursing. I don't want all the name calling. I want something that is affirming and
Mm.
uplifting. I I love the love songs and the ballads from back in the day.
Yes.
The words were just so beautiful.
Yes.
I love Marvin Gaye, and some of the songs that really helped us through and challenged us through the life and the struggles we had during that time, what's going on.
Yes.
But on my television, I don't watch news. I don't watch any of the ABC, CBS, whatever. My television is all streamed in all day long. This is all I listen to with beautiful sights from around the world.
Yes.
And very tranquil music. And this is how I work. This is the environment in which I work. I don't need a lot of talking. I don't need that excitement. And then at the end of the day, I wind down with, believe it or not, British mystery shows.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So yeah, I between Prime and Acorn and a couple of channels that I pay for, I love the British criminal and mysteries because they're not gory. Criminal Minds and all of our shows like that are so bloody, so gory. The British, it's different, and Australian as well. It's not. It's detective shows, but it's a different level. It's not as violent because it doesn't depict the gory, bloody, awful details. So that's how I wind down at night.
Well, speaking of wind down, I'm going to wind us down.
Okay.
And I'm going to say thank you for allowing me this opportunity for us to sit and for this audience of mine to be able to ear hustle on just a good, rich conversation with Gwendolyn Reese. So I hope we left you with a few bits and bites to chew on. Until next time, remember the importance of connections.